Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to tonight's May 24th, 2017 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. As always, we appreciate your involvement with your town board at these meetings, whether you're here in the auditorium in person or whether you're watching us on our cable access channel or streaming us live on our YouTube channel. However you're participating tonight, we appreciate that. We welcome you. I do want to note that all of the material that we have on our computer screens are, if you're here in the back, if you're here in the room, we have a folder in the back of the room with the meeting agenda and all the supporting material that we'll be reviewing at tonight's agenda. We also, if you're watching from home or somewhere else, streaming live or on the TV, all of the same material is available on the Town of Brighton website. That's townofbrighton.org. So you can follow along with us as we go through tonight's meeting. I want to start with a pledge to the flag. I'm going to ask Councilmember Vogel to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Just a couple of brief announcements. In case of an emergency, we don't anticipate it, and fortunately we have a number of people in blue here tonight. But in case we do have an emergency, you will hear the town's emergency alarm system. If you hear that, please leave the room and leave the building immediately, either through the door to my right, marked with the exit sign. If you go out that door, turn right, go down the stairs, out the back door of Town Hall and away from the building. Or you can leave through the double doors at the rear of this room, both marked with the exit sign, through the lobby, out the main front door of Town Hall, down the steps, and then away from the building. Now, if we experience any technical difficulties during the live cable TV access broadcast of tonight's meeting, if you lose the video or the audio, please call Spectrum at 756-5000. Again, for any technical difficulties during the live cable broadcast, please call Spectrum 756-5000. In just a moment, well, let's just go straight into the recognitions and presentations tonight, because we do have some very, very important things to be honoring this evening. I'm going to start by inviting Michael Pollock from Brighton Volunteer Ambulance to join me up here. You may know Michael in any number of the hats that you wear, whether it's keeping the kids safe on the streets or working the ambulance. But Michael Pollock is here tonight because May 21st through May 27th is National EMS Week. And the theme of this year's celebration of National EMS Week is EMS Strong, Always in Service. And of course, that truly describes our Brighton Volunteer Ambulance, because 24/7, in coordination with other public safety agencies like our law enforcement and fire agencies, Brighton Volunteer Ambulance is there, right at the corner of Westfall and Winton, in that beautiful historic home, providing service to the community, not just to people who live here, but to people that work here, people who are driving through on our roads. So I do have a proclamation. It's fairly lengthy. I may just excerpt it a smidgen. But I do want to read it because it is important to make sure everybody understands what an important agency to the quality of life here in Brighton Volunteer Ambulance is. Whereas members of Brighton Volunteer Ambulance provide 24-hour basic and advanced life support emergency response services within the town of Brighton in accordance with the state of New York and local medical authorities, thus dramatically improving the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas, in addition to providing emergency medical services, Brighton Volunteer Ambulance also renders patient walk-in first aid, free temporary use of crutches, wheelchairs, or walkers, free walk-in blood pressure screening, and offers training programs for residents in general EMS education, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, and automatic external defibrillation, AED. And whereas the theme for 2017 National EMS Week, EMS Strong, Always in Service, not only describes the 24/7, round-the-clock emergency medical services provided to our community, but it also reflects how emergency care has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and even access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, and outside the agency, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, emergency nurses and physicians, trained members of the public and other providers who provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments and honor these emergency medical service providers, particularly Brighton Volunteer Ambulance, by acknowledging and observing National Emergency Medical Services Week. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Supervisor, and the members of the Brighton Town Board do hereby proclaim May 21st through 27th, 2017, as Emergency Medical Services Week with the theme EMS Strong, Always in Service in the town of Brighton. And we encourage the community to not only reflect upon the efforts of Brighton Volunteer Ambulance as they continue to provide us with critical emergency services, but also to recognize with gratitude all of our emergency medical and first responder organizations within our great town. And it's signed by myself as well as my colleagues on the town board this 24th day of May 2017, and I'm proud to present it on behalf of our whole board to you, Michael, and I know you've got a great team behind you at Brighton Volunteer Ambulance. Thank you.
Supervisor, council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for remembering BVA. We are very fortunate that we have partners, the town in general, our public safety, police, the fire. People don't realize that there's an AED in every emergency vehicle in the town of Brighton, and that every police officer, every firefighter, all the EMS people are all trained to use them. We work with the school district to make sure their AEDs are in place properly, with churches, multiple places. So if you get a chance, feel free, go to our website, www.brightonambulance.org. You can sign up for a CPR AED class if you're a citizen. If you're a professional, we also work with doctors' offices and training their staff. Our open house, June 4th, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock is coming up, and feel free to come tour our ambulance. We'll have our other public safety partners tour our base and see where our proposed new base, if you haven't heard, we are expanding. We've run out of room, so we're working with the town, working through the different steps to get the proposal approved, and hopefully in the next couple of years you'll be seeing a new improved facility to serve the people of Brighton. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you, Michael. And you know, as Michael talks about that new facility, I think it's also important to point out, in addition to all the other things that Brighton Volunteer Ambulance does. Brighton Volunteer Ambulance is the steward, and they're a wonderful steward, to one of our most important landmark buildings in Brighton, one of the oldest Brighton bricks. A home there built with bricks made right here in Brighton during the 19th century, and the work that you have done with your adaptive reuse of that building and maintaining it even as you have expanded reflects the care and the sensitivity that you have for the community. So again, to the whole BVA family, we're grateful for that as well. Thank you, Michael. We have also celebrated this past week National Law Enforcement Week, and I'm going to ask Chief Mark Henderson to join me at the podium. We have a proclamation honoring National Law Enforcement Week, but we also have a number of departmental awards that the Chief is going to be presenting this evening. But first, I do want to read this proclamation in honor of National Law Enforcement Week. Whereas for generations, the brave men and women of our nation's law enforcement agencies have answered the call to serve and protect our communities. Enduring long shifts in dangerous and unpredictable circumstances, our nation's police officers embody the courage and honor that represent the best of America. And whereas, to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy, May 15, 2017, has been declared as National Peace Officers Memorial Day. And whereas May 14 through May 20th, 2017, has been designated as National Law Enforcement Week, so that we can officially express our gratitude for the selfless public servants who wear the badge and put themselves in harm's way to keep us safe, and pay respect for those who lost their lives in the line of duty each year, because each fallen police officer is one too many. And whereas the men and women of the Brighton Police Department have built and continue to maintain strong community bonds through their community engagement initiative, which brings together law enforcement, academia, youth, civil rights groups, faith leaders, community members, and business people. And whereas knowing that strong community bonds are essential for law enforcement officers to do their jobs more effectively and safely, the Brighton Police Department works hard to build community trust and enhance public safety, thereby helping to prevent crime before it happens within our neighborhoods. Now, therefore, I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and members of the Brighton Town Board, do hereby honor with gratitude not only the police officers of the town of Brighton, but all who bravely serve in law enforcement each and every day to move our world towards a more just and safer tomorrow. May we keep working together to build the bridges needed that will shape a future that is worthy of the brave and selfless spirit that all law enforcement officers embody. And in honor of National Law Enforcement Week, both nationwide and here in the town of Brighton, May 14 through May 20, 2017, I have signed this proclamation along with my colleagues on the town board, recognizing and honoring the Brighton Police Department during National Law Enforcement Week. I'll present this to you, Mark.
Thank you, Bill. Accept it. Thank you, Supervisor. I'll accept that on behalf of the men and women of the Brighton Police Department. I know this is the best time of the year where we get to recognize the actions of the men and women of the police department with a formal awards presentation. And I thank the town board and you, Supervisor, for allowing us to do it in this format. To give a little background on how we get to an award, we have a guiding general order that talks about different levels of police service award. There's the excellent police service, there's life-saving, valor. There's certain criteria that must be met. There's a formal committee that guides the process. The committee consists of the supervisor, a member of our command staff, and the Brighton Union president. Somebody gets nominated award for their actions when they're recognized by their supervisor or their coworkers. And it's my honor tonight, Supervisor, to present awards to a number of officers and a citizen, a civilian who became involved in a situation. So I'm amazed every day. You'll hear, I'm going to go over 3 specific examples, talk about some situations. I'm amazed every day when I come to work and I hear the feedback from the community on the outstanding work of the men and women. So it is my honor tonight to present these awards. Captain Klein, Captain Cathaldi, will you join me, please? We'll start with Officer Michael Romack, Officer John Starr, and Investigator Gary Chula. So John, why don't you come up? While you're en route, I'll give a little background to this. The period that we look at, that we capture for the awards is May of this year to May of 2016. So this award that I'm going to talk about in September, Gary Chula was an investigator. He retired this past April after 40 years of service. He had a family conflict and could not join us tonight. And Officer Michael Romack is now Investigator Michael Romack, who, as luck would have it, right, Captain? About 5 o'clock got called out, and we're currently working an investigation. So, John, you're on your own, so why don't you come up here? Can you handle it, all the awards, bring the plaques back?
I think so.
Okay. On September 12, 2016, a person went to an address on Oakdale Avenue in the town of Brighton. The individual forcibly entered the home by pushing the resident. Once inside the home, the subject forcibly stole property from the homeowner. The individual left the scene prior to the arrival of the Brighton Police Department. A suspect description was broadcast and the area was checked. The suspect was not located. Approximately 90 minutes after the incident, Officer John Starr was still searching the area. He stopped an individual that matched the suspect description. At that time, Officer Starr was able to identify the individual, but the subject could not be conclusively linked to the incident. Officer Michael Romack, acting in the capacity as a crime scene technician, responded to the scene of the crime on Oakdale to process the scene for forensic evidence. Thanks to his thoroughness and attention to detail, Officer Romack was able to identify a latent fingerprint that was believed to have been left by the perpetrator. Officer Romack was able to successfully secure the latent fingerprint for further evaluation and testing. The fingerprint was entered into a statewide database that led to the identification of the suspect. That suspect was the same interaction, the same individual that Officer Starr had gained information on. It was through that information that Investigator Chula, who was given the follow-up, was able to locate the individual in Elmira, New York. And for those that know Gary, Gary has a way of quickly establishing a rapport. He worked with this individual. He got the individual to turn himself in voluntarily, secured enough information that the individual was formally charged with robbery and burglary. This case is a great example of teamwork, attention to detail, and good old investigative police work that resulted in a violent offender being charged with a crime. It is my honor to present the Brighton Police Department Excellent Police Service Award to Officer, now Investigator Michael Romack, Officer John Starr, and retired investigator Gary Chula. Congratulations.
I would love to. I just want to say how proud I am. I came into this profession to help people, and this was only a couple months out of the police academy. To see the look on the face and kind of see how it works to truly help someone was an incredible, incredible moment. And I'll remember that for my entire career. And I want to just say thank you to everyone for this award, and I look forward to continuing to work for the town of Brighton.
Officer Ryan Lehigh. On March 1st, 2017, Officer Lehigh was dispatched to a family trouble call on Southland Drive. Those of us in law enforcement know that these can be the most dangerous calls. You never know what you're getting yourself into. and we usually respond with multiple officers as we go to these type of calls. While en route to the call, Officer Lehigh observed the male subject walking on the side of West Hamilton Road. Officer Lehigh was familiar with this individual and knew that he was the one person involved in the incident on Southland Drive. Officer Lehigh could also see that the individual appeared distraught, and the subject attempted to flee and run into traffic as Ryan approached. After a brief foot chase, the subject suddenly stopped, and then it attempted to fight with Officer Lehigh. Officer Lehigh remained calm. He shouted commands for the subject to stop. The individual was aggressive and combative, leaving Officer Lehigh no choice but to deploy an electronic control device, which allowed Ryan to gain control of the individual without injury to the subject or to Officer Lehigh. I can tell you that I was able to see this interaction firsthand because on that day, Officer Lehigh was wearing a body-worn camera. I saw how professional and how calm Ryan handled this. This was no usual call. This was a highly agitated individual that was clearly focused on causing harm to Officer Lehigh. His calm demeanor, his control, and his professionalism, I'm telling you, Ryan, I am so proud of you on how you handled yourself that day. It's my honor to present you with the Excellent Police Service Award.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Henderson. Thank you, Supervisor Maley. I'm grateful for this recognition. I'm blessed to have wonderful coworkers and to be part of an organization that provides me the training and equipment needed to serve this community. Thanks again.
Ryan is joined here by his family. John has a girlfriend with him this evening. This last award that I'd like to present tonight involves the action of a citizen. Mr. Michael Nixon, could you join me, please? I'm looking out. There's actually two people that look very much alike, and if you'll see, you have a twin brother, right, Michael? John. Yeah. It's John, and the only way that you can tell the separation is the first initial, so come on up. I learned that after a while, and I was talking to somebody else that didn't have the initials, so. Supervisor, we often use the saying, if you see something, say something. And what I'm about to read to you, you're going to be concerned. You're going to say, how did that happen? But it gets right down, if you see something, you say something. On October 26, 2016, Mr. Michael Nixon was driving on Interstate 590 when he observed a person sitting on the railroad tracks in the area of Cardiff Park. And for those that don't know, Cardiff Park is right on the Brighton City-Rochester border. This is the say something part of our story. Mr. Nixon called 911 to report what he observed. This didn't look normal to you, nor would it look normal to me. Mr. Nixon is a volunteer firefighter with the Fairport Fire Department. After calling 911, he drove down to the area to see if he could be of further assistance. When he arrived in the area of the railroad tracks, he could see that a female, a young lady, was sitting between the rails of the track and was crying. She was clearly despondent. What Mr. Nixon could see next was an oncoming train that was fast approaching. Mr. Nixon sprang into action, and without regard for his own safety, he pulled a 22-year-old female off the tracks. The female was physically trying to get back to the railroad tracks. Mr. Nixon had to physically restrain her and hold her down as the train went by. Again, I talked about body cameras. There was an officer that was on the other side of the tracks, and this entire incident was caught on body camera. Mr. Nixon, you prevented a tragedy that day. You saw something, it didn't look right to you. You said something and you called 911 to start the first responders in action. And you didn't stop there. You continued to see if you could be of help, and in so doing, you prevented a tragedy prevented a tragedy to a family and to our community. It is my pleasure to present you with the Brighton Police Department Citizen Award. Thank you, sir. I guess I should have warned this young man they'd have a speaking opportunity. I think I scared him when I told him he was going to be broadcast live on YouTube. So, but you are joined by your mother. So this is a snapshot of the outstanding work that our men and women do every day here in the town of Brighton. Thank you for allowing us to present these cards. Thanks.
And again, thank you, truly thanks to the women and men of the Brighton Police Department. But as you can see, our sister agencies in other communities, the work that is recognized tonight truly is second to none. And it is why we are so proud of the men and women that serve us in the Brighton Police Department. As we always do, we're now going to continue on with the open forum portion of our meeting. During the open forum period, members of the audience may address the town board about any matter, whether or not it is on the agenda tonight. Now, we do have one public hearing on tonight concerning the formation of the Browncroft Lighting District. And if there is anyone here to address that, I would encourage you to wait until we call that public hearing, which we will do very shortly. But if you're here to address the board about any other matter, I'll recognize you. After I do recognize you, if you would please come to the forum, to the podium. We'd appreciate it if you would state your name and address. Please direct your comments to the board and not to other members of the audience. Please be courteous. Try to keep your comments as concise as possible. If you do have written comments that you're speaking from, you may give them to our town clerk, Dan Amon, and he will enter them into the record of tonight's meeting. I would also ask that any matters relating to town personnel not be discussed in the open portion of our meeting. If you're watching at home, if you're watching us on YouTube or somewhere else on your cable channel, you also have the opportunity to participate in our open forum by calling 303-3060. That's 303-3060. Someone will take your question or comment and relay it to me up here. Whether or not you're here or whether you're calling in, if we can answer your question, we'll try to do that. If not, we will certainly try to get back to you. Again, that number is 303-3060. And if you're deaf or hearing impaired, you can also participate in tonight's open forum by calling our TDD line at 784-5205. Again, 784-5205 for the TDD line to participate in tonight's meeting. So the open forum portion of the meeting is now open. Is there anyone that would like to address the board during the open forum portion of the meeting? Yes, come on up.
Pass out folders to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to first off thank the board and you supervisor for letting me speak. My name is Lexi Popovich. Address is 1595 Elmwood Avenue. I am from the Smoking and Health Action Coalition, and I work under the American Lung Association. And I'm just going to be briefly speaking to you about tobacco-free outdoors and inside of parks, playgrounds, recreational areas. So annually in New York State, 3,000 people die from secondhand smoke exposure to tobacco. In New York State, almost 13,000 youth under 18 will become new daily smokers every year. Without sustained action, Over 875,000 New York youth alive in 2014 are projected to become smokers, with an estimated 390,000 New York State kids alive today dying prematurely from smoking. A recent youth risk behavior survey report in Monroe County revealed roughly 24% of youth currently smoke either cigarettes, cigars, or e-cigarettes. And the most shocking is that 51% of those youth that are currently smoking any of those products have attempted to quit in the past month. With the average age of teens to start smoking is 13, we urge to understand how important these topics are. So, tobacco-free living reduces a person's risk of developing heart disease, cancers, COPD, respiratory diseases, asthma, and etc. This also means living free from secondhand smoke exposure. Prohibiting tobacco use in outdoor areas such as parks, recreational areas, hiking trails, and outdoor spaces provides numerous benefits to the public. First, it prevents secondhand smoke exposure. It also restricts smoking cigarette butt litter and pollution, and also prohibits tobacco use in outdoor areas to help denormalize its use and also reduce youth smoking initiation from this. A recent Monroe County Community Tobacco Assessment Survey we use every year revealed that, quote, when walking through an area around building entryways, smoking should be what? 53% of respondents said not allowed at all, and 32% said this should be restricted to certain areas. In addition, another question was, at a public park or outdoor recreational area, smoking should be what? 34% responded not allowed at all, and also 34% responded restrict to certain areas. In addition, not only have asthma emergency department and infant child asthma visit rates increased significantly in Monroe County in the past few years, but the plethora of secondhand smoke and thirdhand smoke research and evidence has become more clear. Exposure to secondhand smoke is not only unhealthy, but it also can reach concentrations found in indoor areas. It contains over 7,000 chemicals and 70 cancer-causing agents. It increases non-smokers' risk of developing heart disease and lung cancer by 20 to 30%. Brief exposure can cause immediate harm and health impacts, specifically impacting those populations who are more vulnerable to these, including the elderly, infants, and children. Smoke can drift up to 25 feet, and exposure can trigger asthma attacks in, again, youth and children. Today, half of all children between age 3 and 18 in this country are exposed to cigarette smoke regularly, with these children experiencing more ear infections, asthma, and more missed days of school. Cigarette butt litter is posing a serious litter threat and toxic waste disposal problem. Not only does it impact property values and different aesthetically pleasing areas of parks and playgrounds and recreational areas, but it also creates high maintenance costs to clean up, and it remains the most littered item in the U.S. with over 175 million pounds littered every year, and an average of 65% of every cigarette butt is littered. The U.S. Surgeon General acknowledges that children observing adults engaging in cigarette or tobacco use is influential to whether they will accept this social behavior and actually initiate smoking themselves. Youth are more likely to use tobacco when they see tobacco use as acceptable, such as in parks and recreational areas. 88% of adult smokers will start by the age of 18. So that's a huge percentage of people that could be prevented from smoking just by seeing people smoking and seeing that as socially acceptable. There are over 550 municipalities around New York State that have passed regulations restricting tobacco use in recreational areas. In Monroe County alone, the town of Ogden, Rush, Henrietta, Wheatland, the village of Brockport, and Scottsville, and also the city of Rochester have all gone 100% tobacco-free in their parks. The east side of Rochester doesn't have as many parks as the west side, so we're urging those towns on the east side to join their partners and really promote these type of issues. The town of Brighton manages and maintains over 350 acres of parkland and open space for both citizens and visitors. With numerous town parks and a vested interest in keeping these parks safe and clean, they also prohibit alcohol in all parks. So working under tobacco, we feel like this should parallel pretty well. If there's alcohol prohibited in the parks, we believe that tobacco should be as well. Tobacco is the #1 preventable cause of death and disease in this country, killing more people than alcohol, AIDS, car accidents, illegal drugs, murders, and suicides combined. A tobacco-free policy would not only mirror the health culture of Brighton citizens, but it would set a precedent for all students educated in the town. It would protect the environment from cigarette butt litter, and it would prevent dangerous secondhand smoke exposure, with those being able to access more safe breathing air. A grounds policy and a parks policy would promote a safe and healthy driven community that upholds the values to enhance the quality of life. Additionally, e-cigarette usage by New York State high schoolers has doubled in the past 2 years. Even though smoking has gone down for that age, it is seen to be influenced with dual use with other tobacco products. And with the recent adoption of the Town of Brighton's local law to amend the Town Code Chapters 202 and 22215 that designates the regulation and control of e-cigarette and or vapor sales establishments, the Town of Brighton has already come to understand the importance of protecting youth from a public health standpoint. Not only have we applauded that, but we'd like to also educate on the other things that could be pushing as well. The momentum that law paves the way will help spearhead the prohibition of tobacco use in public outdoor spaces and town grounds. The community already has an emphasis on many health and eco-conscious initiatives, those including farmers markets that you guys have here, clean sweeps, the Color Brighton Green organization, and various sustainable activities for green, energy saving, and climate protection goals. Instituting a tobacco-free policy would already parallel the tremendous efforts that are happening right here on a grassroots level and also a town level at the Town of Brighton. In conclusion, the Town of Brighton holds strong values for community ties, environmental sustainability, unity, safety, cleanliness, and recreation. To keep public health at the forefront of the community, it is imperative to provide policies that support, enhance, and maintain a healthy, conscious, tobacco-free, and sustainably growing community. Implementing tobacco-free policies will not only create cleaner, safer, and healthier outdoor spaces, but it will also protect employees, youth, elderly, families, the wildlife around the areas, and also prevent secondhand smoke exposure, environmental pollution, and also the social acceptability of tobacco usage, primarily its impacts on youth. I urge the Town of Brighton to consider the importance of these policies and hopefully engage with one another regarding these issues. Thank you.
Alexandra, I applaud you coming forward with this, and I appreciate that. As chairman of the Community Services Committee, we've already begun discussions with that, and Dan Amon has been carrying the ball on that. It was not on last month's calendar, but I will add it to our agenda on the 21st of June at 9:30.
Okay.
Everyone is invited to attend, but if you would like to come and make a presentation, I'd be pleased to hear it, because I think this is an important issue. And
Sure.
be in favor of it.
Okay, great.
I think it's important too, Chris. I'm glad you're doing that, because I was going to ask the committee to do that. Just so you know, that Community Services Committee meeting is actually held at Brookside School.
Oh, yes.
Off of Winton Road. Our Parks and Recreation departments are located there, and we welcome you and really anyone, but I think with this material that you have submitted, and we will all have a chance to process that before that next meeting. It really is an opportunity to drill down into this issue, and as Chris said, Dan's been working on it, and so I think we'll have an opportunity for some further discussion that day.
And I'd like to say that when we have Clean Sweep, a lot of Brownie troops and Girl Scout and Boy Scout and Cub Scout troops participate. And one of the first times we had it, I asked the kids what were the most exciting or different things that they found. And this one little girl says, we had a contest to see who could find the most cigarette butts, and I won. And she held up her hand, and they all had bags full, and it was really exciting. So I think from now on, if we continue Clean Sweep, that we would maybe with you could have some kind of contests or look for certain things.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have worked with organizations on Adopt a Highway projects and on Clean Sweep, and it is absolutely true that the number of cigarette butts, anecdotally, I think maybe there's fewer now than there were, and that's a good thing, but there are certainly plenty of them. Another good thing, and I'm very pleased to see this, we did, of course, open our newest town park right across the street this past year, the Sandra Frankel Nature Park with the Brickyard Trail. And I have yet, and I will admit, I am in that park just about every day, walking that wonderful trail. I have yet to see anyone in that park smoking or otherwise using tobacco, and I think that's wonderful.
Great.
But I'm certainly aware of the concern. So
Great. Thank you
thank you
again.
for taking the
Appreciate it,
time
and I
to
will
come
be
in
there
tonight.
on the
Yeah, now, so
21st.
again, it's gotten pushed back on the agenda a little bit till after tax season, so now that that's done, definitely
Right.
ready to jump back in.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I haven't answered email yet
You're
for Monday.
fine.
I just saw it on there, I was like, oh, that's what I was supposed to do
That's
this
okay. I
week, so
figured
I
I'd come
apologize.
speak anyways. to the
But
board.
part of that is the intent is to include the e-cigarettes in this
Right.
town property ban, so that'll be
Perfect.
that'll be in intent.
And you remember how years ago, well, not that many years ago, you'd go into people's homes and there were always a lot of ashtrays around. And I don't see them anymore. I don't
Good.
see the fancy ones and I don't see the little glass ones.
Right. I remember that.
A lot has changed, and the more we can educate our kids about this, the better.
Exactly. Completely agree. All right. Thank you
Thank
guys,
you.
Supervisor and Board.
Appreciate your coming in. We will add, by the way, the materials that you have given us, we'll add those to communications when we formally receive and file communications this evening. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during the open forum portion of the meeting? Hearing none, then we will proceed with our business agenda. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second?
With the addition of this item of communication to our communications for the night. We have motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve and file the minutes for the town board meeting of April 26, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Next, as I indicated, we do have one public hearing tonight. It is a public hearing concerning the formation of the Browncroft Lighting District. Dan, has the necessary legal notice in this matter been given?
It has, Supervisor. Sorry, one moment. I had that till I realized Alex was at the podium, and I remembered that I was supposed to have that. That was in the May 4th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know it's posted out on our board. Notice having been given, I hereby declare the public hearing on the formation of the Browncroft Lighting District to be open. Is there anyone, we have received 2 items of communication, which we will include in the record. Bob and Judine Scheit, dated April 21st, and Gary and Marie Van Graffland from May 5th of this year. So those communications will be in the record, and the podium is yours.
Thank you. My name is Cassandra Petsos. I live at 175 Browncroft Boulevard. I'm here to represent the Browncroft Neighborhood Association and read into the record the statement from Bob Scheit. He couldn't be here. He would be doing this. He is the person who spearheaded the effort to extend the period street lighting from the Rochester side of our neighborhood to the Brighton streets. The street lighting system is concrete and period, and we fought. I was spearheaded the fight to keep it in the city of Rochester in the 80s, and it's gratifying to see that there's a possibility that this streetlight system will be consistently throughout the Browncroft neighborhood. So now I'll read the letter into the record. Dear members of the Brighton Town Board, Brighton residents of the Browncroft neighborhood were pleased when the City of Rochester completed street lighting improvements in 2014. As seen in the photo that you've been given, the lighting ends at the border between the City of Rochester and the town of Brighton. Soon after construction began, some Brighton residents on Fairhaven, Dorchester, Windermere, and Corwin roads expressed interest in having the lighting extend to Brighton sections of the Browncroft neighborhood. Once estimated costs were determined, residents of Windermere and Corwin remained most interested. In October of 2016, Brighton residents of Windermere Road and Corwin Road, representing 80% of the assessed property values, working with the Town of Brighton Engineering Department, completed notarized petitions supporting the extension of the street lighting of the same design and construction to the Brighton sections of Windermere and Corwin. Through formation of the tax district, we seek to pay our own way for the improvements sought for our streets. We view our investment in this permanent improvement as a way of contributing to the long-term character and heritage of our neighborhood. Your support to allow us to do so is requested. Regards, Bob Scheid. And he's from 259 Windermere Road, the Brighton side of the neighborhood.
Thank you. And we do have his correspondence as part of the record, but it's certainly always good to hear it.
One
Yeah,
more thing.
sure.
We do have a few other residents here, Jeff Frazier and also Mrs. White, who both live on Corwin Road.
Okay. Thank you. Would any of you, or is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this matter of this public hearing?
My name is Jeff Frazier. I live at 357 Corwin Road with my wife, and my neighbor is Maureen White, right over here. She lives at number 341 Corwin Road, and we are both in favor of extending the city lighting to our properties in Brighton. And the lighting is just significant. It's wonderful, and we feel left out. So we would like to have it extended to our properties. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we have one more resident, and then,
Hello, Supervisor and Council members. My name is Zach Shafrath. I live at 251 Windermere Road, so on the Brighton side of the street. I'm actually Bob Scheidt's next-door neighbor. I moved here from Texas 2.5 years ago, and I got to tell you, we made the best decision of our lives to move to the Brighton neighborhood. And this neighborhood is an absolute gem. And I'm in full support of extending the lighting down the street. And I think it's kind of ironic that the Brighton side of the street is in the shadows at nighttime. By extending the light, I think it would increase the safety in the neighborhood. I have 2 young daughters that like to run and play with our other 2 neighbors. And I feel as if it would increase the value of the neighborhood and sustain that heritage and value that we hold true. But I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to the board and for your support of this initiative.
thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address this matter? Louise?
I have a couple questions. First, this is going to be a lighting district, correct?
Correct.
Is it going to be RG&E?
That's a great question. And the initial answer is yes. However, as we have discussed at previous meetings and in other forums, the town has had some serious issues with the performance of RG&E and their street lighting system. RG&E is very much aware of those concerns. And in particular, not only has it been a reliability issue, but their failure to make necessary capital improvements that would allow conversion of these systems to LED lighting has been a real bone of contention. And conversion to LED lighting would save a tremendous amount of money on an ongoing basis. Obviously, from an environmental perspective, it would be a big improvement. But right now, the infrastructure of the existing lighting system, the conduit is so old that it would not support the demands of LED lighting. And moreover, RG&E has very candidly told us they have not and have no intention of submitting what is called a tariff application to the Public Service Commission to support neighborhood LED streetlights in decorative systems such as those existing in the town of Brighton. So as we look to acquire our street lighting system, I think this is one part that we would be putting in. Mike, I don't know whether you have had discussions about the nature of the work that would be done here. I mean, will these street lights, and maybe the decision hasn't been made yet, but you know, is there, are there, will the, let me ask two questions. Will the conduit and other infrastructure support LED lighting as that conduit is currently planned?
We haven't gotten into the design of it yet. We can certainly make sure that happens. It's going to be
Okay.
all brand new, Bill.
Yep.
So it's something that we can certainly make happen.
And maybe it's appropriate, and I know, I mean, I'm fortunate enough, I do live in a neighborhood with streetlights, and I imagine you would like them installed yesterday if possible. But maybe one of the things we want to do is coordinate that with our acquisition, because right now, I don't believe RG&E could install LED lighting because they're not tariffed for LED lighting.
That is my understanding.
And as we look at, you know, making sure that the system is designed properly, let's look at, you know, from a timing perspective, does it make sense to install the older systems, or does it make sense to conclude a transaction, get the lighting system, and then right from the start install LED lights? And maybe there's another way to do it. But I do want to make sure that we get those lights in as quickly as possible. But at the same time, you know, I'd hate to see us do it twice.
And also, Mike, when you say they're going to install a new conduit, is that going to be a new grid for this particular neighborhood? Or is it going to, because the grids around here are so old that they are constantly going out, and they say we don't have the money, and we don't have the equipment to fix it yet. So I would hate to see them form a district and then just have nothing but problems.
No, Louise, as part of this project, we'll be installing all new conduit, and we'll be connecting into the city system. So it'll be all new. It won't be what we're running into in our existing old neighborhoods. So
But
it'll be new stuff.
as part of acquiring those existing antiquated systems from RG&E, I anticipate, I don't want to get into the details right yet, but what I will say is that the cost of making the capital improvements is going to be much more significant, frankly, than the cost of buying the existing system. And that's something we're going to have to look at how we finance, because we are going to have to upgrade all of our neighborhood street lighting systems throughout the town in order to support an upgrade to LED. So that's designed to improve the reliability.
Well, are you looking for the old-fashioned lights or just lights?
Yes, they're the old.
Because RG&E keeps telling us that they can't get the parts anymore, they can't do it, and in our neighborhood and in others around here, there are poles that aren't working and haven't been working for a long, long time.
Louise, these won't be the incandescent lights that we have in the older neighborhoods. These will be QL induction, so they'll be a bit modern light. So we won't run into that same situation we've been running into with RG&E. Should be all set.
And one other question. When they say that we're going to be paying our own way, do they mean a lighting district? Or
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if that meant a lighting district or you're just going to be on your own.
No,
Okay.
it'll be that's why we're holding the public hearing, the Browncroft Lighting District.
Hey, Bill, if I may.
Sure.
And Mike, when you say we're going to be installing them, will we contract it out? Will we do our own forces? Will RG&E put them in? Who is we?
We'll be going to bid on this. This is, we'll more likely bond this, and then we'll go to bid with it.
So it'll be an independent company, independent of RG&E. Will RG&E end up owning the lights?
I got to look into that. I'm not sure whether we'll own those lights and buy the power from RG&E, or whether RG&E will actually own the lights.
That sort of gets to the question that I was raising, is from a timing perspective. I would hate to, I'm suspecting that we'll be in a position to structure this in such a way that RG&E does not own them, that they are town-owned lights. It wouldn't make sense to do it that way. And that, of course, would facilitate, since they would have up-to-date conduit and everything else, hopefully that would facilitate the LED system, hopefully right from the start.
Now, they're going to tie into the city system. That's where the power is going to come from. It's part of that system, Mike?
Yeah, that's correct.
And who owns it over there?
That's the city. The city owns their own lights.
They own all of their lights?
My understanding.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, is there any other questions from members of the board or members of the audience? Hearing none. Sorry, Ken?
Just to comment on that subject you were just talking about, and I'm looking to Ms. Zazo to correct me if I misstate this, but I believe that the proposal put before this board for a public hearing involved a project budget that included the district paying for the installation of the actual lights.
That's correct.
And so if the district funds and bonds the installation of those lights, then those lights are owned by the district, not by the town, not by RG&E, but by the district. In terms of an alternate installation, for example, LED lighting, potentially another roadblock to that is that the budget that was created for the purpose of bonding for the creation of this district may not have included an estimate as to that cost. And that cost, which is stated not to exceed $54,100, cannot be exceeded
Unless there's an amendment.
Well, not just an amendment, but a further petition and public hearing on that issue.
Right. Okay. Further comments? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing to be closed. Can I have a motion? You have a motion in your packets. Can I have a motion to approve the formation of the Browncroft Lighting District?
Bill, I move that, move on the issue of formation of the Browncroft Lighting District, and move that we adopt the resolution as prepared and is before us tonight.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none on the motion to form the Browncroft Lighting District. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
I want to congratulate the neighborhood on your hard work in making this happen, and I vote aye. The next matter, the actual action item that I am going to ask the board to take is sort of a follow-up, if you will, to the public hearing that the board held last month on the supplemental draft environmental impact statement for the incentive zoning proposal for the proposed Whole Foods Plaza. As you recall, while we closed the live public hearing, if you will, as required by SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, we held a written comment period open. The law requires at least 10 days, and we held it open 12 days through this past Monday at 5:00 p.m. We have a number of written comments that the town received. Some of them were received by my office. Some of them were received initially by Dan's office. I think some of them may have even been initially received by Ramsey's office, Ramsey Boehner, our town planner. So all of those communications that were received before 5 o'clock p.m. this past Monday, and I can tell you at least one email was received at 4:59 on Monday afternoon, and that will be included as part of this record, is going to be coming in tonight, and I'm going to ask for a motion to include those as part of the record. But I think it's also important, an awful lot of people came in last week and spoke. I think, if I recall, over 40 people spoke, and certainly based on the conversations I've had since then, there is a lot of conversation going on in the community, and that's a good thing. So just from a process perspective, I just want to give a brief update. What does it mean? We held that public hearing. That was on a supplemental draft environmental impact statement. Where do we go now? And the next step is going to be the preparation of a final environmental impact statement. Now, ultimately, that final environmental impact statement and the findings statement that follows that final environmental impact statement are documents that this town board approves. But the final environmental impact statement itself, initially the applicant will be submitting documents. The final environmental impact statement must answer substantive comments that were received both during the public hearing and during the written comment period. If you recall, as part of the supplemental draft environmental impact statement, the town board did direct the applicant to answer substantive questions relating to traffic, and those answers may be rolled into the final, if you will, or they may feel that there are some additional information, answers, responses to some of those comments. We'll have to see. But a lot of people have asked what the timeline is going to be, and it is a timeline, and it's very hard to say. Now that the written comment period has closed, the developer, the applicant, will be taking the next step in putting together what it considers to be a draft of a final environmental impact statement. And the timing on that really is driven by their ability to put that together and respond. We will receive that material and respond and provide comments of our own. And so it's really a little hard to say exactly when that will happen. What I can tell you, as is certainly required by law, and I hope that everybody has seen, whether you've read the comments of members of the town board, either during the initial draft environmental impact statement or during the supplemental draft environmental impact statement, we have and we will continue to give what Seeker refers to as the requisite hard look. That's a term of art, and it's a lot of material. We received a lot of communications on a very thick amount of material, but we will be giving that the requisite hard look as we proceed on through this environmental review process. So I hope that sort of updates that process. I anticipate we'll be talking more about that process in future meetings. But now you have in your packet and you have on the agenda a very lengthy list of communications that you have received on or before 5:00 p.m. on May 22nd, 2017. And I would ask for a motion to receive and file those communications as part of the written record of the public hearing on the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Louise. Any discussion on that motion? Dan, please then call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. We also have our general communications that we will be receiving. I would note that a couple of those items, there are actually 4 communications that do relate to the Whole Foods proposal. However, each one of them was received after 5 p.m. on May 22nd. So while they are not technically part of the written record of the public hearing, like we do with, with communications that the town gets on a regular basis, we are including them, and I have made the writers of each of those communications aware that we will be including them, receiving and filing them as a part of the record of tonight's town board meeting. So those are correspondence from Ms. Curry, Ms. McCann, Ms. Maddox, and Mr. and Mrs. Loeb. The first 3 dated May 22nd, and the last one dated May 23rd. The other item of communication comes from a meeting of the Monroe County Supervisors Association this past Friday. The Supervisors Association meets every month. And this past Friday, our presenters were representatives concerning community choice aggregation. We have talked about community choice aggregation both at the staff level but also publicly at these meetings. Without drilling down too deeply into the world of utilities regulations, which you really don't want me to do, community choice aggregation really is a new way that a community can engage in the management of a system and the provision of electrical and gas utility service in that community. A pilot program was conducted in Westchester County. Many municipalities in Westchester County, representing over 100,000 households in the county, are now members of a community choice aggregation program in Westchester, managed by Joule, that's Joule. For those of you electrical engineers in the house, that is a term of art. Don't ask me to define what a joule is, but Mike probably could if pressed. But they have been managing the system down in Westchester County. You may have seen in the paper the village of Brockport has looked at adopting a local law. I think they did adopt a local law, which is the first formal step in indicating a community's decision, a community board's decision, that they want to proceed with community choice aggregation. Again, without getting into a lot of the details, community choice aggregation is a way to aggregate buying power for a community, and to do so with the option, which I certainly think if we proceed with it is an important option to use, an option to make that power renewable energy. And that would be a way to dramatically increase the use of renewable energy, not only here in Brighton, but in all of the communities that have indicated that they are interested in participating in this program. Actually, right now, the town of Brighton and many other communities in Monroe County participate in a consortium of governmental entities which use our buying power to collectively buy power for municipal facilities at a significant cost savings over the going rate from RG&E. This would be a way to take sort of a similar approach with a managed system out to our residents. And the reason I'm talking about all this is at the end of the presentation, the folks from Jewel Community Power and the Rochester People's Climate Coalition who made the presentation presented each of us with envelopes containing postcards from residents of our various communities asking us to support the participation of our community in CCA, Community Choice Aggregation. And I was very pleased to see that the envelope that was given to me seemed to be the fullest of all the envelopes. It seemed to me that we had more postcards in our envelope. And in fact, we have, and in our packet tonight, postcards signed by 51 Brighton households asking the town board to take up and hopefully approve entry into community choice aggregation here in Monroe County. We have had meetings. We have another meeting, I think, coming up shortly. This is something that we are looking at very, very closely, and I anticipate it's something that we're going to be continuing to bring through our community structure, probably through our finance committee, and then to the full town board to consider a local law as a first step in proceeding with a CCA. So those are, that's a summary, a rather lengthy summary of those communications. Also, we do have the material that Alexandra Popovici from the Smoking and Health Action Coalition of Monroe County provided us. We did add that. So can I have a motion to receive and file all of those items of communication?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on any of that? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio? Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Committee reports, Community Services Committee. Chris?
Bill, Community Services met on May 17th, and a number of issues were discussed. In particular, we talked about building maintenance and the replacement of a window broken by a wild turkey.
Interior
window, believe it or not. Brookside, but Matt Beeman reported that he wants to focus on tree replacement and some future plans through the department there to replace ash trees that we've begun to lose in the interior of the park. We continue to treat the town trees out on the streets and on the periphery of our parks, but Matt sees it inevitable that we're going to be losing interior trees, and he wants to keep a focus on how we were going to replenish that. Corbett's Glen, the committee is still being formed. You indicated, Bill, that you thought you might add another member to the committee.
I anticipate we'll be having the first meeting of that group before the next Community Services meeting.
Issues about the parking at the Upper Glen, or the northern portion, have continued, and using the Temple Sinai property and perhaps expansion of other parking in that area as well. We've talked about the Brookyard Trail and its inclusion in the 4th of July 5K, but it looks like that will not be the case because registrations have already been taken in by the sponsors.
At least not this year.
Not this year, at least. But the issues, it would require a rerouting of the trail and an issue of whether or not it would qualify as a roadrunner event, and they needed more study of that. Crosswalk at Westland Park, or excuse me, at Westfall for the Buckland Park. A tie-in, those discussions continue with the county, but first point will be to actually locate our trail within the Buckland Park as it might tie into that trail end for the Brickyard Trail.
And we do have at least a preliminary plan for that as part of our farmers market construction project, so that would provide the necessary, what the county's looking for is contact on both sides with a trail or sidewalk system, and
we've identified the need for something at that Westfall end of the trail. It's getting heavy use, and I've biked it myself, and you kind of come out at the end and say, where do I go from here? So that's going to be a great tie-in. The baseball contract is under review, particularly with respect to the outside concessionaire. We're talking about accessibility improvements still at the town park. They've been designed, but we're waiting on CDBG grant applications. The county has recommended that our grant application be included in the 2017 award, but of course that's become a national issue, and the president has suggested that those community development block grants will be discontinued or cut back drastically. So hopefully there's still some hope for approval of that. Islamic Center overflow parking is discussed and how best to address that. All the different groups that are working cooperatively. There's a bunch of neighbors trying to figure out how best to serve that, that population that has a heavy usage, obviously, on a Friday midday for services. The Sway Fun, I always have difficulty with this one. The Sway Fun glider is still anticipated perhaps this summer as funded by Kiwanis, and we're talking about plans for that. The Farmers Market Community Center, the bid documents have gone back to the architect for more detail through Mike's office so that they can be ready to solicit bids. Funding continues to be pursued through Joe Morales and Joe Rollback's offices and perhaps the Genesee Regional Market if we can get a change of policy there. Clean Sweep, a very successful event, May 13th, despite threatening weather. But we got, but Louise got her group through quite effectively. It appears that we will not need crowd managers at the 4th of July, which would have required a substantial cadre of trained crowd managers, but it's been determined, at least in discussions with the state, that the current legislation that, or regulations that would require crowd managers for every 250 people in attendance would not apply to an open area such as the fireworks. The town pool fence project is going forward. A vendor's been chosen. We've verified that the school renovation will not have a real impact on our departmental programs. The traffic box project is going forward. Katie Malley, who is the one of the art teachers at Brighton Central School District, tells me that the art club will be out on Westfall on hopefully June 6th and perhaps June 7th to paint the 2 boxes that I primed last fall, and if weather permitting, they'll be up and running. I did also get another call from Carol Kenyon, who painted the box at Clover and Highland, expressing an interest, further interest in a box over on North Landing. And Penfield, I've confirmed that box is a county box. I've already contacted Joyce Cordello, and we hope to have an application in for that as well. So that's going forward. The issue regarding rent source inquiry by landlords and proposed legislation is under discussion. We've resolved that we should get input from both sides here and input from landlords about the propriety of questioning a prospective tenant about where their rent money is coming from, if it comes from Section 8 or child support or such, whether or not they could be discriminated against. It's an important issue that's come to the fore. So it's being discussed there and also in the Public Works, another committee as well.
Finance.
Finance. New business. In Corbett's Glen, Matt apparently is focused on trees there because of the high winds, and we're looking at an issue and going to be reviewed with council about whose responsibility the trees are at the boundary lines when they come down. There's one in particular that was entangled in wires and could have posed a safety issue. This one apparently did not. But the question is it a town tree if it starts on the town side and falls on the private side, or vice versa, and how that's going to be taken care of. And
I know.
you got an answer for that, Mr. Gordon?
We don't have to talk about it here, though.
I'm sure he'll tell me later. All right. The next meeting is June 21st at 9:30 at Brookside, and we look forward to any participation by the community and perhaps the Lung Association.
Absolutely. You mentioned, oh, sorry, Louise,
I
go
have a
ahead.
question. In the minutes, you said that Bill had said that neither you nor I or any town board member need be on the Corbett's Glen Committee, and I'm questioning why that is.
That's after a discussion with Dennis Adams, the chair. He does not see the need for a town board liaison. The chair, the supervisor selects members of that committee, and so that's how the committee will be formed.
I thought that it was part of the Community Services Committee, so that the chair of the Community Services Committee would be on it.
It is not. It's a totally separate committee from the Community Services Committee. What I was going to say is that you talk about Community Development Block Grant. I believe that the funding for the 2017 cycle that we are looking for is intact. However, I actually today signed a letter from the United States Conference of Mayors. Over 350 mayors and at least one town supervisor have now signed that letter encouraging Congress, and in particular, two very important congressmen in that discussion are Congressman Collins and Congressman Reed. And obviously, Congressman Reed used to represent a portion of Brighton. Congressman Collins represents Western New York, and Congressman Reed now, represents a district down in the southern tier, but it comes up to this area. Community Development Block Grant, we get almost no federal money in the town of Brighton. Occasionally we get money for specific highway projects, for example. But the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, that's another one that I sometimes stumble over, is a program directed from a census tract perspective at portions of the community that are most in need. In Brighton, that has been over the years primarily West Brighton, and we've used it for infrastructure projects, particularly sidewalk projects. Also, there is a home improvement program that CDBG funds are used to help lower and moderate income residents with energy-related improvements to their home. All of that would be put in jeopardy. You mentioned today the project we're looking at for this year, which is work in our town park parking lot that was identified partly because of people, on election day, people with disabilities. That park was constructed prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are ramps, but they're certainly not retrofitted to comply with ADA. There are some gaps between sidewalk and the doorways that really are not optimal at all. And so that's something that with this project that we hope will be funded through Community Development Block Grant, and a project that within a very close radius of that park, we do have a goodly number of people that from a census tract perspective qualify as lower or moderate income. In addition, we hold an event every Pearl Harbor Day for over 100 veterans who are residents, or who are, I shouldn't say residents, who are benefited, who are patients of the VA facility. Those are, again, largely people of very modest means. So projects like those, they're not big. They're not a lot of dollars.
17,000, I think, Mike, is that right?
I think it's 40, isn't it? Yeah.
You mean for the
CDBG grant?
CDBG grant's in the $30,000 range this year.
Yeah. But they're projects that have a big impact. The work we've done on sidewalks in West Brighton, make that part of the community more accessible, Rustic Village to get to West Henrietta Road. all of that would be in jeopardy if CDBG is defunded. And so I've added my support to that letter, asking that we, calling on Congressman Reed, Congressman Collins, and really all of Congress to continue to support CDBG. So sorry for that lengthy chat there. Finance Committee, Jason.
Yes, Bill, Finance met last Tuesday, May 16th. Each of the items discussed at our committee meeting appear on tonight's agenda. The additional items discussed were our summer meeting schedule. Instead of Tuesdays at 3:30 during the week prior to a town board meeting, we're going to be meeting the Wednesday prior to our town board meeting, 1 week prior at 8:30 in the morning, and that will be for the meetings in June, July, and August. And we also discussed the source of funds ordinance and considered the ordinances of other communities throughout New York State and throughout the country as well, and for further review by the various committees down the road. Our next meeting now will be on Wednesday, June 7th. We meet in the community meeting room, and we will be beginning at 8:30 in the morning, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks, Jason. Public Safety, Louise?
Public Safety has not met since the last town board meeting. The next meeting is June 13th at 8 in the morning. The public is invited to attend.
Thank you. Jim, Public Works?
Sorry, Council, my apologies. Jason, used the meeting downstairs?
We're meeting in the stage conference.
Stage
I'm sorry,
conference, yeah,
stage
you're
conference room, yes.
We're meeting downstairs.
Jim,
The
Public Works.
Public Works, next meeting is being scheduled Tuesday, June 6th at 9 a.m. in the lower level community meeting room. There has not been a meeting since the last town council meeting.
Thanks, Jim. Before we get to new business, I'm sorry, I meant to do this when we were doing the open forum, but with all the great proclamations and whatnot, I missed it. But let me just take a moment right now. Ray Tierney had hoped to make this presentation, but rather than, he didn't want to upstage the police department awards. But I do want to remind people, Historic Brighton, in partnership with the town of Brighton, is going to be putting on Gideon Cobb Days. Gideon Cobb Days is a 2-day celebration. Obviously, Gideon Cobb was one of the true early fathers of this community. On Friday, June 9th at noon, out at the Buckland Park, and specifically in the area of the Buckland House, there will be the tours will be available of the Buckland House. There will be a food truck picnic. There's a $15 charge for that, and you can sign up for that online at the Historic Brighton webpage, historicbrighton.org. You'll receive a commemorative gift, but perhaps most importantly, the first annual Leo Dodd Heritage Preservation Award will be presented, and it's being presented to former Supervisor Sandy Frankel in recognition of her work in forming our Historic Preservation Commission and having our historic preservation local law passed. Sandy was also a longtime member of the Landmark Society board. So I think it's a great way to kick off that board, to really have just an outstanding recipient for the first time.
And that's at noon on the
That's going to be at noon on Friday, June 9th, out at the Buckland House. Now, Sunday, June 11th, is the second day of Gideon Cobb Days. That's going to start at 2 p.m., and it's really going to start right out here on Elmwood Avenue at the trailhead to the new Brickyard Trail. Parking will be available at Temple Brith Kodesh. Also, parking is available here in the town parking lot, the library side, but we'd really rather, I think, people park over at the temple or walk, just so that people don't, as few people as possible have to cross Elmwood Avenue. But that's going to be at 2 o'clock. There'll be a walk along the Brickyard Trail. It's about 3/4 of a mile to Westfall Road. Some of the people that really know the trail best are going to be out there with the walk. They'll be able to share their insights on the history of that land and also on the flora and fauna that you're going to find out there. You may not find some of the same things at 2 in the afternoon that you do at dawn or at dusk, but you're going to hear the frogs. You may see some turtles. Who knows what you're going to see out there at 2 in the afternoon? Some of the animals that really like the sun. So the walk will go across to Westfall Road and then literally across Westfall Road to the Buckland House, where an old-fashioned ice cream social will be held. That is free, but to get it for free, you have to sign up online, again, at historicbrighton.org before June 8th. It's free if you sign up before June 8th. On June 8th or at the door, it's the princely sum of $2 for the ice cream social. So come one, come all. It's going to be a great event. Thanks, sponsorship by, I mentioned the town and Historic Brighton, but the Chamber of Commerce, Brighton Rotary, Dollinger Associates, and Electronic Field Productions. So thanks to all of those groups for making what is sure to be a great day possible. All right, now we'll move to new business. Jason, reading and approval of the claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier this evening, I reviewed claims totaling $545,549.18. Notable claims include to Depository Trust Company, representing principal and interest payments for bonds that finance the Public Safety Wing HVAC system and 2015 dump and sweeper trucks in the amount of $97,140.48. The next payment notable claim was to Moffett Turf Equipment in the amount of $1,281.15, representing repairs for the ball field groomer, and also to Schichtel's Nursery in the amount of $3,683, representing payment for trees planted by the Highway Department in right-of-ways of town roads. The claims appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Can I have a motion to reappoint Dennis Adams as chair and as a member of the Conservation Board for a 2-year term effective July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2019?
I'm pleased to. So moved.
Go ahead. Second.
Any discussion?
You do have a resolution number 2.
And we do indeed have a resolution in the packet. So that motion is in the form
Move
given
that we
in that
adopt the resolution
resolution.
before us.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, Dan, please call the roll. Sorry.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Thank you, Dennis, for your service on that important board. And we also have the reappointment of 4 current members of that board. Can I have a motion, please?
Yes, to authorize the reappointment of Diane Richardson, Susan Riblett, Sarah Rubin, and George Smith as members of the Conservation Board for a 2-year term effective July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2019. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Also, appointment of Mitch Nellis as a member of the Sustainability Oversight Committee. Now, that would be an immediate appointment through year end, but because that is such a relatively short period of time, we would also at this time ask that in the motion you have before you would appoint him also to a full 2-year term. So his term would begin immediately, and then he would serve a full 2 years addition, July 1, 2018 through December 31, 2019. Can I have such a motion in the form?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Dan, please.
Supervisor, I would just ask Mike, on behalf of Public Works, if we could make sure and remind these folks that they need to come see me right away to get sworn in. I don't want us to have an embarrassing gaffe like Comida.
Well said. Now, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks to authorize the closing of various capital projects with approval for the finance director to perform all related accounting entries. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Suzanne, do you want to just, I know this is largely a bookkeeping function, but an important one.
Exactly. As I've said before, we create capital projects in our books whenever we have a large capital project that's going to go multiple years or we borrow funds for. So that's what most of these are for. We've got a dump truck, a flusher truck, roof replacement project we did down at the Ops Center. So any of these funds that are remaining that from borrowed money for the project, we put into a debt service fund. And we'll use that to retire future debt. We also had about $250 left over from the Brickyard Trail project. And we'll put that money, we didn't borrow any money for that project, but we did take some money out of reserves and trust funds, so we'll put that back in the reserve account.
Thank you. All of those are set forth in Suzanne's letter that you have, her letter May 15th that you have as part of the packet. We have a motion and a second on that. Further discussion? Thank you, Suzanne. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Louise?
The next matter is for approval to declare one 2007 Chevy Type 3 ambulance as surplus and authorize the disposal of same via municipal auction. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Of course, this is in our role relating to the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance Special District. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks approval to dispose of certain surplus computer-related items through eBay auction services that have been determined to be obsolete and no longer able to support operations. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And Bill, is this the first we've used eBay, or have we used it in the past?
It is. Well, Suzanne can probably give a.
Yeah, I do not recall using eBay before.
I don't
We've
think we
had
have.
some other online
Interesting
auction sites.
experiment.
Well, and to a certain extent, we talked at our finance committee and at our last meeting here. These are computers that may still have sufficient residual value to be worth selling them. We're going to sell them for pickup. We're not going to deliver them. If someone wants to bid on these things, they're going to have to come here and get them. This is part of a process. Obviously, we hope they will sell and we will generate some revenue for the town. If they don't sell, we will be in a position to be able to ascertain that they do not have value, and we have identified a local charitable group that we would then be in a position to make a donation to, for them to refurbish and make them available to people living in the community that have no other way to afford a
I
computer.
see they're mostly 2010, 2011 units. In fact, they all are.
And many of them are, missing hard drives and other significant components. They have, the ones that they have, they've been wiped, so there's no operating system on them. So all of that affects their ultimate value. If they sell, great. If they don't, then we'll know that and take another step. Ken?
And yeah, I just want to make a comment that our IT coordinator, Sue Wentworth, did find a great charity to donate these to. We're going through this process because state constitutional law prohibits the town from giving away town assets. Comptroller opinions opine that the way you know whether an asset is a gift or not is if it has value. If an asset has no value, then it's not a gift. So if we determine that these assets have no value, then they can be freely given to a charity without violating constitutional law or controller opinions, and that clears the way for us to be able to do that. If they have some value, then they should be sold even if it is a small value that we can obtain through an eBay sale. So this will test the waters and see what we get and keep us in compliance with state law.
Thanks, Ken. Any further discussion? We have motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to approve a reappropriate $9,250 in unassigned, unspent 2016 general funds to the 2017 town's streetscape account to support the site development. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
I have some questions about this.
Sure, go ahead, Louise.
This is for the shelters.
That's correct.
For the bus shelters, which I voted against because I don't think they're shelters. But it said here that you spent $15,750 for 2 shelters, and you want to pay for the other 2, but you only have $9,250. Where are you getting the rest of the money?
The balance has already been appropriated into the 2017 budget, and when we developed the 2017 budget, we knew that we would have some leftover funds from 16, and we'd be able to use that funding, the $9,000, to add to what we put in the 2017 budget. Well, this way we'll have enough for 2 more shelters.
And you're going to put the same kind in?
Yes.
To me, they are not shelters because they're not 3-sided. And it's not going to protect people from the rain and the snow. Go ahead.
And Mike, we've discussed some seating, both for the existing shelters and the new ones. So where are we at on that colorful idea?
Well, we're still working with the folks to provide that once it's Rochester Connect. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's
I think.
So they're going to provide some of the bus cubes. We're going to request that they provide some of the bus cubes. I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with them yet.
Okay.
So with that, not only do they not have 3 sides, but they don't have seats?
Correct. Right now, they do not have seats.
How much are the seats?
The intent of the seats would be they'd be a donation. So,
They're cubes. They're colorful cubes.
They could be beautiful, but they're not going to protect people from the weather.
No, and you're right, Louis. I mean, I guess what I would say is they provide partial protection from the weather. They do provide more protection from the weather than the open air that is there now. We had hoped that the full cost of them would be covered as part of the green infrastructure program. They do have a green infrastructure component, but it was determined that they would not be fully funded. I do not disagree with the fact that they don't provide the same level of shelter as ones with the walls. The plastic, I don't know if plexiglass isn't the right, but it's that type of surface. Those walls do become a very frequent graffiti target, unfortunately. There's a very unique, I think, look and feel to those shelters that are eye-catching, and the intent really is to go along with some of the thematic material in the green infrastructure project, and by using these very distinctive shelters, stimulate interest, get people thinking. Right now you have a little sign, the size of the iPad here is all you see, and you may see people standing, and for the most part, other than 1 or 2 locations, that's all it is. It's just open air, standing. So this will add some visibility, but be partial. And you're right, it's at best, it's only partial coverage for folks standing
I
underneath.
assume to add those sides would cost substantially more, and these were part of the green infrastructure project that was funded.
Yeah, Christie,
By grant.
obviously the sides, there would be an additional expense for those, but the intent, one of the main intents of these, and Louise, you're not wrong by saying they're not shelters per se. I had the same discussion Sunday with a bunch of people. We gave a little tour for the GIGP, that was on Saturday, I'm sorry. They do provide some respite from the rain, not a whole lot. But the intent was to encourage people to use our public transportation system, to draw attention to the public transportation system, and basically just to help green up the avenue and, look good. To put the size on, Chris, to answer your question, yeah, there would be an additional funding or additional cost to that. The funding won't cover it. Bill's comment regarding what the GIGP funding would pay for and what it won't. It paid for the planters in the back because they are actually a green infrastructure practice. The shelters themselves were not considered a green infrastructure practice and were not funded by the grant.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Yes, next item is to receive and file an advisory report from the Planning Board concerning the rezoning and incentive zoning application from Alden Road LLC for the proposed project known as 1201 Elmwood Avenue. I move in the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Is this the tower?
Yes, this is the project that, we sort of colloquially talk about, the Terrence Building at the Sykes Center. 1201 Elmwood is the address. It's a property that about 10 acres of which is in the town of Brighton, about 18 acres in the city. And our planning board report, as we always do on incentive zoning applications, is what we're receiving here. And that relates really to the town portion of the project.
What are the amenities they're planning to give us or suggesting?
17th.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember here exactly what they had proposed.
Linkage.
Hey, Bill?
The
between
trail
Highland-
linkage, yeah.
Some trail linkage and also some of the trail property acquisition for the Highland Crossing.
Or the
Trail
Highland
also.
Crossing
Yeah.
Trail, yeah.
This is for both the high-rise or the duplexes and the apartment building.
This would be for the 102 units that they're currently proposing to construct in the town. And you're right, there would be 11 two-unit buildings and a single four-story building with 80 total units. So that would be 102 total units. Obviously, as always, those are the applicant's initial proposed amenities. I anticipate there will be further discussion with them about amenities that we believe need to be provided to the community as part of this project.
So as we vote for this, does it mean that we accept these amenities?
No, all we're doing is accepting the planning board's report, which you see before you, which addresses, some issues relating to the proposed project, but it does not commit us in any way to the amenities. They note a number of issues. They note the fact that, for example, a portion of it is in woodlot, EPOD. They recommend some green elements, bike storage, electric charging stations, the use of pervious pavement, some amenities aren't the right word, some improvements, providing for public transportation and the like. But no, this report only is their advisory report as to some initial comments, and it doesn't end the planning board's role in review of the project.
Is the apartment building the height that we allow, or is it higher?
I believe it's a four-story building, so I believe it's higher than what we allow. That's
That's
our existing zoning.
one of the incentives that they would be looking for. I would note that it is adjacent to a building of approximately the same height that is part of the Brickstone project.
I would just want to add the comment, like any incentive or rezoning project, this project would be subject to full public review, a public hearing, discussion, further discussions, deliberations, negotiations with the developer, long before this town board has to take any decision-making. And frankly, any incentive zoning proposal before you doesn't even have to get taken that far. If you decide that you don't want to put it up for a public hearing, or you don't want to take further action on it, that is acceptable as well. So much still would need to happen before this project were approved, and certainly I've yet to see, frankly, a project, an incentive zoning project or a rezoning project approved as the developer originally proposes it.
Right.
So accepting this doesn't mean that we are saying we may want changes, but you can have your incentive zoning.
No, in fact, what
This
you're...
this is merely saying, thank you, planning board, for your comments, we'll read them.
Right.
That's really all it's saying.
But what's significant is that the planning board is suggesting some things that they believe should be incorporated into the project to make it a better project. So if we receive and file this as you were being asked to, Ken's right. I mean, what we're technically doing is taking it in as a public document and reading it. But what we are reading are initial indications from the planning board as to how the project can be improved.
And what is
And
the next
just
step?
one last note on that. The letter itself that you're receiving and filing from Mr. Boehner as Executive Secretary of the Planning Board has 23 separate recommendations and comments about the proposal. Now, of course, you can make your own and add to those, but the Planning Board itself has 23 separate recommendations and comments on this proposal. So it certainly is not just rubber stamping this and saying everything is fine.
Next steps, Louise, this is somewhat different than your traditional incentive zoning project in that it is operating in parallel. There is a simultaneous city application, a much more extensive application before the city of Rochester for development of the Rochester lands that are a part of this. So we will be proceeding with our incentive zoning process, which will include next some decisions on the environmental review of the project. At the same time, the city of Rochester will be making some of the same decisions. We have already determined by vote, based on the fact that the greater scale of development and the larger land element of this project are in the city, that the city of Rochester will be the lead agency on the overall project. We are an involved agency for several reasons, so we will be, engaged in an environmental review process with the city. But that's really the next.
But since our side of the project is so much smaller, are we going to be built first?
They
It
have.
would take them a long time to demolish that building.
Well, their initial phase of the project is going to be to do the demolition of the building. They, in public meetings, had indicated, some potential phasings. There's infrastructure that's going to need to be built before they can do any of the building construction. So it is going to be phased out in that sense. You are right. What they're doing here is a smaller piece, but it will be phased. They're not going to do the town piece and then the city piece. They're going to be working throughout. They look at the project as one overall project. So they're going to be looking at the project as a whole and developing different portions of it through a phasing schedule.
But this is the same project that's been presented to us here at Town Board and at Public Works in several sessions.
And at several sessions of sort of neighborhood meetings down at Brickstone.
And that large brick of documents that we received,
Yes.
is the detail
This
of all
high.
of this,
And their
which
pub-
includes their
Their
application.
meetings over there became quite contentious. So it's going to be interesting to see how they finish up.
Yeah, I don't know whether contentious, engaged. There were a lot of people there. A lot of people had questions about, different elements of the project. I should note, certainly the focal point of the project are those 102 residential units, but also on the Brighton side of the border, there will be, they're proposing initially a very small commercial component as well, not too dissimilar to the very small, what is now Joey B's, commercial component at Brickstone. That they've sort of described as a model.
I think what a lot of the neighbors across the street are concerned about is that initially the city or the county has said they will not put a stoplight in there, a street light. And there's going to be so many units between the city side and our side, and the people that live on Lilac and those streets would like a stoplight.
Well, there is an existing stoplight. There is an existing stoplight at Azalea.
Yeah.
That is the stoplight that served when that building operated, and that is a very large building, and of course had a lot of traffic at the time. The issue, I'm not sure it's fair, that is whether there would be a stoplight. To a certain extent, it's whether the stoplight would be at Azalea or whether it would move down the street to Goodman, which would put it closer to the town line. And actually, I think there's some question from a DOT perspective as to whether there is enough traffic at that intersection to justify a traffic signal. So, but that's all sort of on a more to follow. That's certainly something that's going to be discussed as this project goes through. Yeah, the traffic on Azalea, that neighborhood has been a long, active neighborhood in the city. Issues of where the bus lines would go, this traffic signal issue, concerns about the presence of a hotel there. So there, there are a number of issues beyond just the usual issues of the magnitude of the project itself. We have a motion and a second to receive and file that advisory report. Any further questions or comments?
My apologies, Supervisor. Repeat the motion and second.
Jim made the motion and Chris seconded it.
Thanks.
Could you then, Dan, please call the roll?
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to receive and file negative declaration for the town of Brighton landfill water main extension project. I move that we adopt the resolution prepared by the attorney for the town before us.
Second.
I think Jim got you under the wire there, Jason. This is a project that is included in our capital improvement plan, and it follows up on the significant fire a couple of years ago down at the landfill, where we experienced some real challenges based on a fire way down at the bottom of the hill, and having to access fire crews, having to access water from hydrants really up at Browncroft Boulevard. That was not optimum. We have the opportunity, using existing water district funds, to construct this water main down to the lower level where the landfill operations are. It's something that we reviewed during the CIP process. We discussed it in Public Works, and this is under seeker, a negative declaration. Any questions on it, Chris?
Just so people understand, the negative declaration doesn't mean we're against it. It's just the opposite. We're saying that we would determine that the proposal will not result in any adverse environmental impact, and therefore is not required then to go through a full environmental
Certainly any
review.
material adverse
Yes.
environmental impacts, yeah. Significant, yes, thank you.
Significant. Thank you, Kevin.
So we have a motion and a second on that. Further comments? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio? Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. The next matter is a matter that I am recusing myself from, as I have done when this matter has come before the town board or any of our committees. So I will now leave the room. Jim, I will ask you to conduct this next matter, and I would ask someone to go get me. I will be back in my office.
Okay. All right, and this next matter before us has to do with the receiving, filing, and incentive zoning application, amendments and supplements for the project known as 1925 South Clinton Avenue, and to set a public hearing on June 28th, 2017 for the same. And at this point,
I move that we receive and file the incentive zoning application, amendments and supplements for the project known as 1925 South Clinton Avenue, and that we set June 28th as the public hearing date for the same, and adopt the resolution to this effect as prepared by the attorney for the town before us.
Second.
Now, this incentive zoning is just for the one building, is that correct?
No.
It's for the whole project?
Right, so the resolution before you is to set the public hearing for the entire project as proposed. There's a fairly good thick set of plans for development of the entire site, and that site involves more than just one building. There are a variety of uses that are being proposed. This matter has been the subject of discussion at the Public Works Committee meeting.
Yep.
We've had meetings with the developers and
Yes,
their
I
representatives.
apologize. It's Comida that I was thinking of. That Doodlebugs is the only one that is seeking Comida at the moment.
No, actually, I believe it is a project that is seeking overall to get County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency relief. However, part of the proposal is to make sure that town taxes or a payment is made as an amenity payment to the town, which would pay in full the town portion of the otherwise assessed and levied taxes for the project as it is developed. That does not necessarily apply the same for the County of Monroe, nor for the school district, but it does for the town. The matter before you is simply to set the public hearing. I do believe, and I know the developers' representatives are here this evening, I do believe that this matter is also going to be on the June 6th Public Works Committee meeting
That's correct.
agenda.
That's correct.
And you probably are hearing that for the first time. You know, we're certainly interested in having the developer come so that we can talk about and work through some of the issues in anticipation of the public hearing that the board still has questions about regarding amenities, among other things. So that's going to be discussed at the June 6th meeting, and then, of course, there is the public hearing that'll be held on the 28th. There's also a series of actions that both the developer needs to take and the town needs to take to get ready for that incentive zoning public hearing, including sending written notice out to neighbors who are affected by this project. So all of that is set forth in the resolution.
Okay. All right. Having said that, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? None? All right. Call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Okay. Done. Now we need to get the supervisor back in here.
I just had to sit through the whole
Clerk will do this.
Okay.
And that Public Works Committee meeting again, Jim, is when? June 6th
June
at what
6th,
time?
9 a.m.
9
in the
a.m.
morning,
9 a.m., June 6th.
the lower level community meeting room. Okay. All right. While we're waiting, Louise, can you restate some of the significant facts about Clean Sweep? I'm going around the town. That was very effective.
Oh, I have some great pictures of the stacks of garbage that was collected, which I should post. There were over 340 people that participated. We are counting all the kids that participated through the schools as well as the people that came here. And they went all over the town, from East Brighton to West Brighton to Town Line Road, all the way up to
It's very apparent.
Brown Crofton. And it was amazing that the excitement that they show when they show up. And more people are bringing back the grabbers, so we haven't had to buy as many things.
Good.
And it's an exciting project. And also the other projects too, I am getting such a huge amount of feedback from the people who drop off medication at the pharmaceutical and drop off their electronics and their shredding. One of the ideas I have, because the Orthodox community has not been able to participate in any of these because they are on Saturdays, and I had told them that I would look into seeing if we could do something about it. One of the ideas I have for the electronics and the shredding, and I've talked to Tim Anderson about it, but it has to be worked out, is if we could have the shredding people bring some of the barrels the day before on Friday, and then each of the barrels has an independent locking system. So if they could bring them on Friday and these people couldn't come and drop off their stuff on Friday, and then we could put them into the garage at the ops center overnight, and they will be locked, and then we could just bring them out in the morning when the truck comes to shred. That's one option. I haven't talked to the shredding people yet, but they said they could not bring a second truck, but they could give us more barrels. Another option would be to have them drop off their electronics too, and that's not as big a problem because it's stuff people are going to throw away anyway, and just have that inside of the garage as well the night before. Tim was a little bit hesitant in talking to me about it because somebody would have to be there in the morning with a key. Well, Mike could be there in the morning. No, if I have keys for example, to this building, and I could take a key, I think I'm trustworthy, for that one time. But that's one way we can do it. The only other way is to tell them to watch the papers and go somewhere else. So that's as far as I've gotten with it.
Well, I certainly think it would be, if we can find a way, obviously we want to make it as feasible for the entire community, maybe even something at one of the schools, I don't know.
Could be. I said, well, you could do my without asking or talking to my husband, I said, well, you could put them in my garage. And he says, yeah, but how are you going to get it from the garage to
Well, that would
the
be
offset of the next
that
day?
would be
So
the
I
challenge
said, well,
of
he
doing
has a
something
truck.
off-site anywhere. But I appreciate. I really appreciate they're great events. They're great community involvement. I know I was over in West Brighton in the area of East River Road and West Henrietta Road and 390 there, and two of us, brought in 4 full garbage bags and God knows how many auto parts, hubcaps,
Right.
trim, you name it. So, trying to find ways to engage, to make the entire community, because we are a diverse.
Well, I have set up October 14th for the next recycling of the shredding and electronics, and I talked to the person that I'm dealing with in the Orthodox community, and I said the Friday before, on the 13th, she says, oh, it's a holiday. So I said, so we're going to have to work out the calendars and so forth.
Good. So I assume you're in matters of the board that
Yes,
you got
yeah.
started?
No, we're in
No,
matters of the
we've just-
supervisor.
I was-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, really, the most important thing I do want to mention is our upcoming Memorial Day ceremony, as we do, or at least as we have done every year since the Veterans Memorial was completed. We will be holding our Memorial Day ceremony at the Brighton Veterans Memorial in Buckland Park at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I do want to invite the entire community to that. It's very moving to be able to honor people who made the supreme sacrifice for our country, but also to come together with family members of some of our fallen sons here from Brighton, but also with our veterans. The Jewish war veterans will be serving as the color guard as they do, and we'll have kids involved. I think that's always an important thing. I look back on my own childhood in a town in Michigan, and those Memorial Day observances as a child were very, very significant. So I know most all of us will be there, and that's something real important. So that's the only item I have. Matters of the attorney.
I just have one rather brief item. So earlier this evening, Supervisor, you were talking about the process for the continuation of the review, of the environmental review of the Whole Foods project. I just wanted to put a couple things in front of the board to clarify time periods and process. So after these are pursuant to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation regulations. After the conclusion of the public hearing on the DEIS, or in this case on the SDEIS, which was May 10th, the regulations actually provide that the FEIS is to be adopted and issued by the town within 45 days. Now, that would bring us to a date of approximately June 24th, which is a Saturday. The town board meeting prior to that would be June 14th. So by June 14th, which is coming right up, the town board is supposed to adopt an FEIS. Now, that time period, it's somewhat of an unusual time period under the regulatory scheme because it can be freely extended by the town board itself without the consent of the applicant, because it is, after all, the town's FEIS. And it can be extended for one of two reasons. One is if problems with the proposed action were discovered during the public hearing or the public comment period that you hadn't previously anticipated, and reconsideration or modification is needed of the plan or the proposed project. The second reason, a little bit more generic, is if you need additional time to prepare an adequate FEIS. So pretty freely able to extend that deadline, but I do want to put that in front of the board that on June 14th, if we don't have an FEIS that the board is comfortable with adopting, we probably should consider passing a resolution which formally extends to a certain additional date in time, the time period within which to adopt that FEIS.
And that's a great further explanation, although you can never totally predict the future given the magnitude of the materials that we received, the number of comments. I guess I would not be surprised if on June 14th we are taking action to extend that time period. Anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you.
All righty. Matters of the clerk.
Nothing this evening.
Matters of the town board.
Supervisor, I was going to ask for an executive session, but the attorney to the town suggested that instead that I ask for a caucus
Okay. And
to talk about employment
where
of
you
a
don't,
particular person.
I don't believe you have to state the purpose of a caucus, but you can make that request, and what I guess I would say is we will determine. I don't believe that needs action of the town board.
It actually can't have action of the town board.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So it's not, if you wish to have a discussion as a political caucus, members of the same political party, which I believe you all are, and members of the same legislative body, which I believe you all are, can have a political caucus on any matter that is not related directly to town business. So you can't go into political caucus and start
And we can't
having
have it here at town hall.
You
We will not have
could
it here.
have it
We
at
will
town
not
hall,
have it
but
here at town hall.
it's-
Let me just
I
say
would
that.
recommend that you don't do that, that it's clear. The open meetings law has a clear statutory exception for political caucuses,
And-
which
and-
is stated to be a private meeting
What I'm
of
simply
members
going
of
to,
the-
let me just cut to the chase. What I'm going to suggest that we do is we, if that's your request, Louise, that we schedule a time to meet in caucus. And that's fine.
And I would suggest that that be done. It's a private meeting of members
Well,
of the
yes,
political party, so that's why I would say not to have it at
We
town
will
hall.
not have it at town hall.
Because it would just confuse
And
that matter.
and we'll get that meeting set up, at the earliest possible convenience, looking at people's schedules. Can I have you don't have any matters that require executive session?
Not tonight.
Neither do I. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Louise made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We will hold our next regular meeting of the town board on June 14th, right here in this room, 7 p.m. Have a great evening. Thanks for being here.